The last analog pilot. Commander Maya Patel stood in the shadow of her grandfather's P-51 Mustang, her fingers tracing the worn metal of its propeller. The morning sun painted stripes across the vintage fighter's polished aluminum skin, highlighting the hand-painted nose art. Analog spirit in flowing script. The Delaware Air Heritage Museum was silent this early, save for the distant rumble of modern military jets from Dover Air Force Base. Maya checked her watch. 600. She had 2 hours before the school tour groups would arrive, eager to see what she lovingly called her mechanical time capsule. At 75 years old, the Mustang was the only airworthy example left on the East Coast, kept flying through Maya's dedication and her grandfather's meticulous maintenance logs. The first indication that something was wrong came from her phone. The screen flickered once, twice, then went dark. Through the hangar's open doors, she watched a formation of F-35s passing overhead suddenly falter, their synchronized flight dissolving into chaos. One by one, their engines died. Maya's heart stopped as she watched the advanced fighters glide desperately toward the base, their pilots fighting for control without their fly-by-wire systems. Her military training kicked in as she sprinted to the museum's radio room, but every digital display was dead. Only the ancient vacuum tube receiver still crackled with life. "This is a global emergency broadcast," a voice cut through the static. At 6:12 Eastern Time, all digital systems worldwide began failing. Military and civilian aircraft are down. Power grids are offline. Unknown objects have been detected in low Earth orbit. Maya ran back to the hangar, her mind racing. The Mustang's cockpit was exactly as she'd left it after yesterday's maintenance check. Every gauge mechanical, every system analog. She pulled her grandfather's flight jacket from its display case, the leather worn smooth by decades of service. Through the hangar doors, she could see them now. Massive shapes descending through the clouds, their surfaces rippling with impossible geometries. The alien ships moved with perfect precision, their formation mathematical in its exactness. As they approached, every electronic device for miles went dark. But in her grandfather's Mustang, the fuel gauge still showed full. The altimeter still tracked true. The magnetic compass still pointed north. Maya made her decision. She pulled on the jacket and climbed into the cockpit, muscle memory taking over as she ran through the pre-flight checklist. The Merlin engine coughed once, twice, then roared to life, its sound echoing off the hangar walls like a defiant shout. Maya, the museum's curator, Dr. Chen, came running across the hangar floor. "What are you doing?" "They knocked out everything digital," Maya called back, checking the oil pressure gauge. "But they didn't account for these old birds. Get on that radio. Tell Dover we've got one operational aircraft." "You can't be serious. That's a museum piece." Maya grinned, the same grin her grandfather wore in his old war photos. "Today it's a fighter again. Clear the hangar." As Dr. Chen pulled the manual release for the hangar doors, Maya's radio crackled. Not the modern radio in her flight suit, but the Mustang's original vacuum tube set. "This is Dover Control, operating on emergency power. Unidentified craft. Identify yourself." Maya keyed the mic. "Dover, this is Commander Maya Patel in." She paused, patting the Mustang's instrument panel. "Sierra Mike 175. A P-51 Mustang. I'm showing full analog functionality. Request emergency clearance for takeoff." There was a long pause. "Commander, are you saying you have an operational aircraft?" "Affirmative, Dover. These aliens might be able to knock out anything with a semiconductor, but they've never met a plane built with vacuum tubes and mechanical controls. Request vector to nearest hostile." Another pause. When the controller spoke again, his voice was steadier. "Sierra Mike 175, you are cleared for takeoff. Be advised, closest hostile is bearing 090, altitude Angels 20. Godspeed, Commander." Maya pushed the throttle forward, feeling the Mustang roll onto the museum's grass runway. The massive alien ships hung in the sky ahead, their surfaces shifting like liquid metal. They were surrounded by the contrails of dozens of modern fighters, all gliding powerless to emergency landings. But Maya's Mustang was anything but powerless. As she pulled back on the stick, feeling the vintage fighter leap into the sky, she couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways. The aliens were about to learn that humanity didn't need computers to fight back. All they needed was mechanical precision, the roar of a Merlin engine, and the determination that had carried their grandparents through darker days than these. Maya chambered around in the Mustang's 650 caliber machine guns and turned toward the nearest alien vessel. Time to show them what analog warfare looked like. Wings of yesterday. The alien vessel loomed ahead, its surface rippling like quicksilver in the morning sun. Maya's hands were steady on the Mustang's controls as she climbed through the thin air at 20,000 feet. The P-51's Merlin engine sang true, each cylinder firing in perfect mechanical harmony. Dover control still reading me. Maya kept her eyes on the target, watching its movements through her reflector gun sight. Another piece of technology too simple for the aliens to disable. Affirmative. Sierra Mike. You're the only clear signal we have. Multiple bogies descending on your position. The alien ship suddenly turned, its movement unnaturally precise. 3 smaller craft detached from its hull, their surfaces flowing like mercury. Maya watched their formation. Perfect, mathematical, predictable. Too predictable. They're flying like computers, she muttered, pushing the Mustang into a shallow dive. Let's see how they handle someone who actually knows how to dance. The alien fighters moved to intercept, their formation maintaining exact distances. Maya smiled grimly and did something no computer would expect. She cut power, kicked her rudder hard right, and let the Mustang snap into a controlled spin. The alien formation broke apart in confusion as she spiraled through their perfect geometry. Their energy weapons lit up the sky, but they were firing at where an aircraft should be, not where her Mustang actually was. Maya recovered from the spin behind the nearest craft, her thumb finding the gun trigger. 650 caliber machine guns roared to life, their simple mechanical action hurling streams of metal slugs at supersonic speeds. The alien ship's hull rippled, trying to deflect the attack, but physics won out. The bullets tore through its surface, and the craft exploded in a blast of green energy. First blood, Maya called out, already turning to engage the next target. Dover, their hulls can't stop kinetic weapons. Simple bullets work. The radio crackled with excited voices, but Maya was focused on the dogfight. The remaining alien fighters were adapting, their movements becoming more erratic, but they still flew with an artificial precision that Maya could exploit. She threw the Mustang into maneuvers that no computer would choose. Loops that bled too much energy, turns that came dangerously close to a stall, slides that traded altitude for position. 2 more alien craft fell to her guns before the others retreated to their mothership. Maya's fuel gauge was running low, but her message had been sent. Humanity had a weapon. She landed the Mustang on Dover's runway, the only aircraft moving under its own power. A crowd had gathered, pilots, mechanics, and officers, all staring at the vintage fighter that had just proven itself in combat once again. Colonel Sarah Harrison was waiting as Maya climbed down from the cockpit. Commander Patel, that was unprecedented. But one P-51 isn't going to win this war. No, Maya agreed, patting the Mustang's worn metal. But it's not just this old girl. There are hundreds of vintage aircraft in museums and private collections around the world. Spitfires, Messerschmitts, Mustangs, Zeros. They're all mechanical. They'll all still fly. And pilots. Harrison raised an eyebrow. Modern pilots are trained on digital systems. Maya smiled. Then we'll have to teach them the old ways. Fast. My grandfather always said that a real pilot should be able to fly anything with wings and an engine. Time to prove him right. Within hours, Maya's video footage of the dogfight was being shared via analog radio networks worldwide. The call went out. Any pilot who could fly without computers, any mechanic who could maintain piston engines, anyone who understood the old ways was needed. The response was overwhelming. Retired pilots emerged from retirement, offering to teach their skills. Aviation museums began restoring their collections to flying condition. Private collectors offered their vintage aircraft for the war effort. In an old hangar at Dover, Maya stood before her first class of modern fighter pilots, all eager to learn how to fly without computer assistance. Behind her, mechanics were already at work restoring more vintage aircraft. "I know what you're thinking," she began. "These planes are obsolete. They're too slow, too simple, too old. But sometimes the old ways are exactly what we need. The aliens can shut down our modern technology, but they can't stop our determination. They can't disable our courage. And they sure as hell can't predict what a human pilot will do when they're flying by instinct instead of computer guidance." She pointed to the row of aircraft being prepared outside. Mustangs, Corsairs, even an old Soviet Yak-3 that had been found in a private collection. "Welcome to Operation Yesteryear. We're going to teach you to fly the way your grandparents did, with your hands on the stick, your eyes on the horizon, and your heart in the sky. The aliens think they've grounded us. They're about to learn that humanity has been flying a lot longer than they realized." As her students dispersed to their assigned aircraft, Maya looked up at the sky where alien ships still hovered. They had come expecting to face a technological civilization dependent on computers and digital systems. Instead, they would face the combined legacy of every ace who had ever danced through the clouds, every mechanic who had kept their aircraft flying with ingenuity and determination, every pilot who had proven that the most important computer in any cockpit was the human mind. The real war was about to begin. Operation Clockwork. Dawn broke over airfields across 3 continents as hundreds of piston engines roared to life. Maya stood on Dover's control tower, watching crews preparing their aircraft in the gray morning light. The sight was surreal, like a window into history, but with a desperate modern purpose. "Final count," she asked Colonel Harrison, who was coordinating the global attack through a network of shortwave radios. 217 operational aircraft, Harrison replied, her voice tight with tension. 86 Mustangs, 43 Spitfires, 31 Corsairs, 22 Thunderbolts, and an assortment of others. Moscow reports their MiG-15s are ready. Tokyo has 15 Zeros fueled and armed. Maya nodded, studying the tactical map spread across the table. It was paper, of course. No electronic displays worked within 50 miles of the alien fleet. Red pins marked known alien positions. Blue pins showed their staging areas. And the pilots, as ready as 3 weeks of crash training can make them. The vintage pilots have been paired with modern pilots, experience and youth. Harrison paused. "Maya, are you sure about this? We're sending kids who've never flown without computers up against an alien armada. They're better than you think." Maya smiled, remembering the determination in her students' eyes. Sometimes having to unlearn technology makes you a better pilot. They'd got good instincts. They just needed to learn to trust them. The radio crackled. Sunrise in Berlin. Ghost Squadron ready. Dawn in Moscow. Bear Flight standing by. Tokyo dawn approaching. Rising sun wing prepared. Maya checked her watch. A mechanical Omega, like the ones astronauts had worn to the moon. Another piece of technology, too simple to fail. Time to brief the pilots. In the briefing room, faces both young and old looked up at her. Former Air Force pilots sat next to retired crop dusters. A teenage air show performer checked her notes next to a grandfather who'd flown in Vietnam. "Operation Clockwork begins in 30 minutes, Maya began. "The aliens expect us to stay grounded, helpless without our technology. That's their first mistake. Their second mistake was assuming that humanity's strength lies in our computers." She pointed to the map. "Their ships are vulnerable to kinetic weapons, simple bullets and shells. Their tactical systems can't predict non-computerized movements. And most importantly, they've never faced pilots who fly by instinct and intuition. The plan is simple. We hit them from all sides at once, using the sun to mask our approach. No radio calls unless absolutely necessary. You all know the signals. She gestured to the colored flares they'd prepared. Wing leaders will coordinate their squadrons. Trust your training. Trust your instincts. Maya paused, looking at each face in turn. They came expecting to face machines. Instead, they'll face the combined heritage of a century of aerial combat. Every ace who ever flew, every dogfight ever fought, every lesson learned in peace and war, it's all led to this moment. In the pre-dawn light, Maya climbed into her Mustang's cockpit. The leather seat had been worn smooth by generations of pilots. The control stick felt like it had been shaped for her hand. Around her, other engines were coming to life. The deep roar of Corsairs, the purr of Spitfires, the distinctive sound of Russian radials. Dover Control, Ghost Lead. All units report ready. Harrison's voice crackled through the radio. Ghost Lead, you are clear for takeoff. All bases report synchronized. Good hunting. Maya pushed the throttle forward, feeling the Mustang respond. Across 3 continents, over 200 vintage aircraft were taking off, their pilots guided by nothing more complex than gyroscopes and magnetic compasses. They climbed in silence, each squadron taking its assigned position. The alien fleet hung above them, their ships still arrayed in perfect geometric patterns. Maya watched the sun rise, counting down the moments. A green flare arced into the sky from her wing. Simultaneously, red flares rose from the east and west. The signal. Maya pushed her Mustang into a steep climb, leading her squadron toward the nearest alien vessel. Other squadrons emerged from the clouds, their approach paths forming a complex web that no computer could have predicted because it wasn't based on mathematical efficiency. It was based on human cunning. The alien ships began to react, but their responses were too precise, too predictable. They couldn't comprehend the seemingly chaotic patterns of the human attack. A Spitfire squadron from Britain turned directly into a superior force, drawing alien ships into the guns of a hidden group of Russian MiGs. Japanese Zeros darted through alien formations, their pilots flying with a grace that no computer could match. And above it all, Maya led her Mustangs in a dive toward the alien flagship, her grandfather's words echoing in her mind. The best computer ever built sits between a pilot's ears. The battle for Earth's skies had begun, fought with aluminum, steel, and the indomitable spirit of those who dared to fly. The heart of the storm. Green energy bolts filled the sky as Maya led her squadron through the chaos of battle. The alien flagship loomed above them, its crystalline surface reflecting the dawn in fractal patterns. Through her gun sight, she watched alien fighters moving in formations that were beginning to break down, becoming erratic as they faced opponents they couldn't predict. Ghost Squadron, tighten up, Maya called through her radio. Remember your training. They can't hit what they can't predict. Her vintage Mustang rolled through a series of evasive maneuvers that no computer would have chosen, too wasteful of energy by modern standards, but perfect for confusing alien targeting systems. Below, the combined air forces of humanity were giving the aliens their first taste of true combat chaos. A formation of Spitfires drew alien ships into a classic trap, while Russian MiG pilots executed maneuvers that would have been impossible with digital controls. Japanese Zero pilots danced through the alien formations with a grace that no algorithm could match. But Maya's eyes were fixed on the flagship. Through her binoculars, she'd spotted something peculiar, rhythmic pulses of light emanating from its core. Dover Control, are you seeing this? The flagship's energy signature. Affirmative. Ghost Lead. Harrison's voice crackled through the static. Our analog sensors are picking up some kind of central power source. It's broadcasting signals to all other alien ships. Maya's mind raced as she watched the patterns. Years of mechanical experience told her something important. The pulses weren't random. They were cycling, like a massive engine hitting its power strokes. Like a heartbeat. They're networked. She breathed, understanding dawning. Their ships are all connected to the flagship's central system. That's why they move in such perfect formation. They're receiving synchronized commands. A plan began forming in her mind. If the aliens relied on centralized control, then perhaps. An explosion rocked her Mustang as an alien energy beam grazed her wing. Maya rolled with the impact, using the momentum to slip behind a cloud bank. Her squadron followed, their movements coordinated by nothing more complex than hand signals and years of practice. "Dover, I need everything we've got," Maya called out. "All squadrons, all pilots, form up on me. We're going to show these aliens what happens when you bring a computer to a dogfight." Across the battlefield, vintage aircraft began breaking off their engagements, forming into a massive, seemingly chaotic swarm. Maya led them higher, watching the alien ships try to predict their movements. But there was nothing to predict. Each pilot was flying by instinct, their patterns organic and unpredictable. "Listen up," Maya broadcast on the emergency frequency. "That flagship isn't just their command center, it's their weakness. They're so dependent on synchronized network control that they don't know how to handle independent action. So let's give them more chaos than their systems can process." She outlined her plan quickly. It was insane, reckless, and precisely the kind of strategy that no computer would ever devise, which meant it was exactly what they needed. The attack began with a Spitfire squadron diving straight at the flagship's defensive screen. The aliens responded perfectly, shifting their formations to intercept, only to find themselves caught in a crossfire as Mustangs and Corsairs emerged from the clouds at angles no tactical computer would have considered optimal. Maya watched the alien fleet's movements become increasingly erratic as their centralized control system tried to cope with hundreds of independent threats, each moving in patterns that defied mathematical prediction. The flagship's energy pulses became faster, more irregular, like an engine beginning to redline. "Now," Maya called out, "push them past their limits." Every squadron attacked at once, but not in any coordinated pattern. Each pilot flew according to their own instincts, creating a chaotic ballet of aviation that overwhelmed the aliens' ability to compute effective responses. Their perfect formations dissolved into confusion. Through the chaos, Maya led her Mustang squadron straight toward the flagship's core, where the energy pulses were now strobing erratically. The alien ship's surface rippled, trying to track too many threats at once, its networked defense systems overloading. "Ghost Squadron, arm remaining ammunition," Maya ordered, lining up her final attack run. "Let's show them what happens when humanity decides to reboot their system." The flagship's surface was a kaleidoscope of failing defensive patterns as Maya's squadron dove through its weakened shields. Her finger tightened on the trigger, 6 .50 caliber machine guns roaring one last time. Simple bullets, fired from mechanical guns, guided by human instinct rather than computer control, streaked toward the alien vessel's pulsing heart. The impact was beyond anything Maya had expected. The flagship's core erupted in a cascade of green energy, its network connection to the fleet severed in a burst of light that turned the dawn sky to day. Across the battlefield, alien ships began to drift, their perfect coordination shattered. "Dover Control," Maya called out, pulling her Mustang away from the expanding explosion. "The head of the snake is cut off. Their fleet is losing cohesion. Time to show them how we fight when everyone gets to think for themselves." The real battle was just beginning, but Maya knew they had already won the most important victory. They had proven that humanity's strength lay not in their technology, but in their ability to act independently, to think creatively, and to triumph even when everything else failed. She led her squadron back into the fight, the Mustang's engines singing beneath her. The aliens had brought an army of networked computers to Earth. In return, humanity had given them a lesson in the power of individual determination and the simple truth that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. Legacy of Steel. The morning sun painted the sky in shades of victory as Maya watched the alien fleet scatter, their perfect formations dissolving into chaos. Without their flagship's coordinating signal, each vessel moved independently, their actions clumsy and uncoordinated like puppets with cut strings. "All squadrons, this is Ghost Lead," Maya's voice carried across the analog radio network. "The enemy is in disarray. Time to show them what free will looks like in action." Across the battlefield, humanity's vintage Air Force engaged the confused alien ships. Each pilot now fought their own way. Crop dusters turned combat pilots using their low-speed maneuverability to confound alien targeting. Retired test pilots pulling maneuvers that defied conventional wisdom. Young aerobatic champions turning their show routines into deadly combat tactics. Maya's fuel gauge was running low, but there was one more task to complete. "Ghost Squadron, form up. We're going to write the final chapter of this story." Her Mustang led the remaining fighters toward the largest concentration of alien ships. These vessels were different. They were beginning to adapt, showing signs of independent action. Learning. "Dover Control, are you seeing this?" Maya called out, watching the alien ships attempt to form new patterns. "Affirmative, Ghost Lead," Harrison responded. "They're trying to establish local control networks, but their coordination is limited to small groups now." Maya smiled grimly. "Then we've got them. They're thinking like machines, trying to recreate their lost network. But that's not how you win a fight." She keyed her radio. "All pilots, execute Operation Freestyle. Show them what human creativity looks like." What followed was unlike anything in the history of aerial combat. Each squadron, each pilot, fought in their own unique way. A group of Spitfires executed a perfectly timed weave that drew alien ships into a crossfire. Russian pilots turned their aircraft's limitations into advantages, using their lower speeds to force overshooting aliens into prepared ambushes. American Corsairs dove through alien formations with their distinctive whistling roar, breaking up any attempt at reorganization. Maya led by example, her Mustang dancing through the chaos with a grace born of perfect harmony between pilot and machine. Her grandfather's words rang in her memory. "A plane doesn't know it's old. It only knows if the pilot believes in it." The alien ships began to retreat, their movements becoming increasingly desperate as they faced an enemy they couldn't predict or control. Some tried to establish new battle networks, only to have their formations shattered by attacks that came from impossible angles with impossible timing. "They're breaking." Someone called over the radio. "The bastards are actually running." Maya watched the alien fleet streaming away from Earth, their once perfect geometric patterns replaced by a chaotic rush for safety. But she knew this wasn't just a victory over advanced technology. It was proof of something far more important. Later, as the sun set over Dover Air Force Base, Maya stood before her gathered pilots. Their aircraft, battered, bullet-holed, but triumphant, lined the runway behind them. Veterans stood shoulder to shoulder with young pilots, each having proven themselves in humanity's finest hour. "Today, we did more than defend our world," Maya began, her voice carrying across the quiet airfield. "We proved that humanity's greatest strength isn't in our technology. It's in our ability to think independently, to act on instinct, to trust in skills passed down through generations." She gestured to the aircraft behind her. These planes weren't just museum pieces. They were a reminder that sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones. That human intuition can triumph over any computer. That the spirit of aviation doesn't depend on how advanced your technology is. It depends on the heart of the pilot. Colonel Harrison stepped forward, holding a piece of twisted alien metal recovered from the battlefield. "The analysts figured it out," she said. "Their entire civilization was built on networked consciousness. They couldn't comprehend independent action. Every decision was computed, verified, and synchronized. They never stood a chance against pilots who could think for themselves." Maya nodded, looking at the faces before her, the future of aviation, who had learned to fly like their grandfathers while defending Earth from threats their grandfathers could never have imagined. "Remember this day," she concluded, "not just as the day we won, but as the day we proved that humanity's greatest strength lies not in the machines we build, but in our ability to think, adapt, and act as individuals united by a common cause. As the pilots dispersed, Maya walked to her Mustang, placing a hand on its worn metal. The aircraft had proven itself once again, just as it had in wars past. But more importantly, it had helped prove something about humanity itself, that no matter how advanced technology became, the human spirit remained the most powerful force in any battle. The old ways weren't just alternatives when modern technology failed. Sometimes they were exactly what was needed to face the future. And as long as there were pilots willing to trust their instincts and mechanics who understood the soul of a machine, humanity would never be truly defenseless. Maya climbed into the cockpit one last time, just to feel the familiar embrace of the seat worn smooth by generations of pilots. Above, the stars were emerging in a sky now free of alien ships. A sky that belonged, once again, to the children of Earth who had first dreamed of flying among those stars. Not with perfect computer control or networked consciousness, but with skill, determination, and the unstoppable power of the human spirit.